You see, this city, Benin City, is not for the faint of heart. If you are not rugged, the red dust of this town will swallow your soul before the sun sets over Ring Road. My name is Osas, and for 3 years I lived in a family house where my aunts monitored the quantity of oil in my soup. I was tired. I wanted to be a big girl. I wanted to wake up by 10 a.m. on a Saturday, wear my silk robe and sip coffee like those girls on Instagram without hearing, "Osas, come and wash the mortar." I saved every kobo for my makeup business. I told God, give me a place where I am the only authority. That was my first mistake. Never tell God you want to be the only authority in a city where landladies think they are second in command to the Oba. I met Agent Akpan through a friend of a friend. You know the type. He wore a striped shirt that had seen better days, tucked into trousers that reached his chest. He rode a motorcycle that sounded like it was coughing out its last breath. "Madame Osas," he hailed me, wiping sweat with a dirty handkerchief. "I have the palace you have been looking for. New Lagos Road area. Fenced, gated, and most importantly, the owner is a..."
My ears perked up. A ghost? Yes, a big woman. She moved to Italy since 1998. She only sends her account number once a year. You won't see her, you won't hear her. Even if you bring 10 boyfriends, the walls have no ears. We went to see the house. It was a beautiful self-contained at the back of a large compound. The main house was a grand, old-fashioned bungalow with a wide veranda. It looked peaceful. It looked like a sanctuary. I walked through the rooms, tiled floors, a kitchen that smelled of fresh paint, and a bathroom where the tap actually gushed. I was in love. I paid the caution fee, the legal fee, and the development fee. I even gave Akpan an extra 10,000 naira for showing me the light. For the first 8 weeks, I was living the dream. I bought a small generator, a Pass My Neighbor, and placed it behind my kitchen. I would come home by 10 p.m. after a late makeup gig, blast my Bluetooth speaker, and dance. The compound was silent. The big bungalow in front remained dark and empty. I was the landlady of Uselu. I even started planting small flowers in the garden. I felt like I had finally made it. But you see, life in Nigeria is like a Nollywood movie. Just when the music is sweetest, that is when the soundtrack changes to genge. It was a Tuesday. I had a particularly long day at the studio. I was tired, my feet were aching, and all I wanted was to soak my legs in warm water and sleep. As I drove my small Toyota toward the gate, I noticed something strange. The gate was not just closed, it was double-chained. And there, parked in the middle of the driveway, was a battered yellow Mercedes taxi. Its trunk was tied down with ropes, overflowing with heavy sacks of gari, a giant mortar, and several Ghana must-go bags. My heart skipped. Maybe it's a visitor for the neighbors, I whispered to myself, knowing fully well I was the only tenant in the back. I got out of the car to open the gate. Suddenly, a voice like a cracked thunderclap pierced the air.
"Who be that?"
I froze. A woman stepped out from the shadows of the veranda. She was tall, built like a retired wrestler, with a wrapper tied tightly under her armpits. Her face was set in a permanent scowl, as if she was smelling something rotten. "Good evening, ma," I stammered. "I am Osas. I live in the back flat." The woman walked toward the gate, her slippers making a menacing slash sound on the gravel. She didn't open the gate. She stood behind the bars, looking at me from my artificial lashes down to my painted toenails. "The back flat," she repeated, her Benin accent thick and heavy. "So you are the one that Pam put in my house, the one who has been using my compound as a disco hall. I am Mama Efe. This is my father's land, and from today, the overseas has closed. Welcome to the Republic of Mama Efe." She didn't open the gate. She just turned around and walked back inside, leaving me standing in the dark with my car engine still idling. The ghost had returned, and she didn't look like she was going back to Italy anytime soon. The first morning after Mama Efe's return, I didn't wake up to my alarm. I woke up to the sound of a heavy wooden stick banging on my metal door. Kum, kum, kum. Osas, Osas, are you dead inside there? Is it every day you will sleep until the sun starts cooking the ground? I jumped out of bed, my wig lopsided, heart racing. I opened the door to find Mama Efe standing there with a broom in one hand and her other hand on her hip. She didn't even wait for me to say good morning. She pushed past me and entered my parlor. Jesus, what is this smell? She cried out, covering her nose with her wrapper. Mama, it's my scented candles. It's lavender and sea salt, I explained, trying to find my balance. Lavender and what? It smells like the perfume they used to wash corpses in the mortuary. Open the windows. In this house, we breathe the air God gave us for free. And what is this rug? You want to hide dust so that my asthma will start again? She spent 30 minutes inspecting my life. She looked at my makeup kit like it was a box of juju. She counted my shoes and hissed. 1 person, 2 legs, 20 shoes. Are you a centipede? This is why you young people are poor. The real drama started on Friday. In Benin, Friday night is for life. I had a wedding to prep for the next day, so I went to the market to buy supplies. By the time I finished struggling with the traffic at King Square, it was 7:50 p.m. I was racing. I was driving like a Formula 1 pilot through the potholes of Uselu. I reached the gate at exactly 8:02 p.m. The gate was not just locked, it was armored. Mama Efe had used a chain that belonged to a sheep. I came out of the car, trembling. Mama Efe, please, it's me, Osas. I'm just 2 minutes late. The veranda light flickered on. She came out wearing a nightgown that looked like a white tent. Who be that? She shouted into the darkness. It's Osas, ma. Please, open the gate. Osas? I don't know any Osas by this time. The Osas I know is a decent girl who is supposed to be in her room by 8 p.m. Any girl outside by this time is a night crawler. Go back to where you are coming from. My gate is closed for the Sabbath. Mama, please, there are cultists at the junction. I have expensive makeup in my car. Then tell the cultists to help you apply the makeup. Maybe if you look like a masquerade, they will be afraid to touch you. She turned off the light. Kippy. Total darkness. I spent that night in the car, fighting mosquitoes that were humming hallelujah in my ears. Every time I tried to close my eyes, I would hear her cough from the main house, just to let me know she was still awake, watching and enjoying my suffering. Saturday evening was the final straw. I had a client coming over, a big-time bride, and the heat in Benin was hitting 38 degrees Celsius. NEPA, in their usual fashion, had taken the light. I went outside to pull my I better pass my neighbor generator. Vroom! The small machine started humming. I felt a sense of victory. 2 minutes later, I heard a splashing sound. Splash! My generator coughed, sputtered, and died. I ran outside. Mama Efe was standing there with an empty bucket of soapy water. Mama, what did you do? I screamed. This smoke is entering my lungs. Do you want to kill a widow? Do you want to use carbon monoxide to send me to my husband? But Mama, I have a client. She's paying me big money. Then tell her to use the sun as her ring light, Mama Efe snapped. In this compound, once it is 6 p.m., we don't want noise pollution. If you want to play big girl, go and buy solar. But as long as you are using this small pepper grinder engine, it must stay off. I looked at the wet generator, then at the sky, then at Mama Efe. I wanted to cry, I wanted to fight, and I wanted to laugh all at the same time. The woman was a professional wahala manufacturer. To make matters worse, I decided to wash my bed sheets on Sunday. I spread them neatly on the balcony railing of my back flat. 5 minutes later, I had a thought. I looked out. My white sheets were lying in the red Benin sand. Mama Ife was downstairs holding a long bamboo pole. I have told you, railing is for the eyes, not for your underwear and blankets. It makes my house look like a refugee camp. If I see one more cloth on this railing, I will use it to mop the gutter. I sat on my doorstep and put my head in my hands. I was paying 400,000 naira a year to be treated like a criminal. I started thinking, is Italy really that far? Maybe I should just find Agent Akban and use his chest to practice boxing. The thief in the night. The week started with a heat wave that would melt a stone. I was already on edge. My junior brother, Eselsa, had just returned from Uniben, and my mom sent him to bring me a bag of rice and some fresh benet oil. He got to the house by 7:30 p.m. I was in the shower, the sound of the water masking the drama outside. Eselsa, being a Gen Z boy with dreadlocks and 2 piercings, didn't know the rules of the Republic. He started banging on the gate shouting, "Sister Osas, open the gate, it's heavy." Mama Ife didn't even ask who is there. She didn't check the peephole. She just saw a boy with dada at her gate. She grabbed her whistle, a loud, piercing thing she must have stolen from a traffic warden, and started blowing it like her life depended on it. Fee! 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 Thief! Ochuko! Armed robber! They have come to finish the widow! She screamed at the top of her lungs. I ran out with my towel tied around me, soap still in my ears. By the time I reached the front, the neighborhood boys had already gathered with sticks and planks. Poor Eselsa was shaking, his hands in the air, leaning against the bag of rice. "Mama, stop! That's my brother!" I screamed, pushing through the gate. Mama Efe didn't stop. She looked at Eselsa and hissed, "Brother? With this hair? This one is a Yahoo boy. He wants to use my destiny for rituals. Osas, I told you, no visitors. Now you are bringing criminals to mark my house." The neighborhood boys dispersed when they saw me, but the damage was done. Eselsa was so scared he dropped the oil, which spilled everywhere, and he ran back to the junction without his left slipper. That night, I couldn't sleep. The smell of the spilled oil was everywhere, and the sight of my brother running for his life kept playing in my head. The next morning, I decided I was going to wash the veranda. I was scrubbing the floor when Mama Efe walked out. She looked at the water I was using and screamed, "Osas, you are wasting my water. The pumping machine is crying. Stop that nonsense now." I ignored her. I kept scrubbing. "Are you deaf?" I said, "Stop it." She reached for the hose and yanked it out of my hand. Something snapped. The 8 p.m. lockout, the dead generator, the corpse-smelling candles, the humiliation of my brother, it all came rushing to my head like a flood. "Give me that hose, Mama Efe," I yelled. "You are shouting at me in my father's house?" She pushed me. It wasn't a big push, but it was enough. I pushed her back, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I wanted her to move. But Mama Efe was a Benin warrior. She grabbed my wig, my expensive 24-inch bone straight, and pulled. "Ah, my hair!" I screamed. I grabbed her wrapper. We started spinning like a whirlwind in the middle of the compound. It was a sight to behold. A 25-year-old makeup artist and a 60-something-year-old widow wrestling in the red dust. "I will show you that I am the one who gave birth to your mother," she shouted, trying to pin my arms down. "And I will show you that my rent has not expired," I replied, dodging a stray slipper. We fell into the mud created by the spilled water and the red sand. We were rolling, grunting, and pulling. My nails were gone. Her headgear was in the gutter. The neighbors were peeking over the fence, some laughing. Finally, I managed to pin her arms. We were both breathing heavily, covered in mud, looking like 2 street urchins. "Are you happy now?" I panted, tears finally starting to sting my eyes. "Are you happy that you have made my life a living hell? I paid for this house. I didn't steal it. Why do you hate me so much? What did I ever do to you?" Mama Ife stopped struggling. She looked at me, and for the first time, the fire in her eyes went out. She looked at my ruined hair, then at her own trembling hands. She didn't shout, she didn't hiss. She just sat there in the mud and started to shake. I thought she was angry, but then I heard a sound I never expected to hear from the lioness of Usilu. She started to cry. Not the shouting cry of someone who wants attention, but a deep, hollow sob that comes from the bones. I let go of her arms. I sat back in the mud, too exhausted to move. We stayed like that for a long time. Two women, covered in Benin dust, sitting in the middle of a compound that had become a battlefield. "Osas," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Do you think I was born with a heart of stone?" I didn't answer. I just watched her wipe the mud from her face with the edge of her torn wrapper. "Come," she said, standing up painfully. "Come inside. Let me show you why I locked the gate. Let me show you why I am the landlady you all hate." I followed her into the main bungalow. I had been living in the back for months, but I had never stepped foot inside. It was like stepping back in time. The air was thick with the scent of old newspapers and camphor. The walls were covered in framed photos, but Mama Efe didn't go to the kitchen to wash the mud. She went straight to a small wooden table in the corner of the parlor. On it sat a single candle and a large framed photograph of a young man in a graduation gown, flanked by a man who looked like a younger, happier version of the overseas husband. "Sit down, Osas," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She began to talk, and as she did, the Yeye landlady vanished. She told me about 15 years ago. Back then, this house was the heart of the street. I was not a lioness then, she said, looking at the photo. I was a mother to everyone. I had a son, Efe. He was just like your brother, vibrant, full of life, with his hair in Dada style because he loved music. And my husband, he was the kindest man in Edo State. She told me how they used to keep the gate open 24/7. They had tenants they treated like family. They would have compound meetings that were actually just parties with starch and banga soup. But you see, Osas, the world is not a playground, it is a forest. 10 years ago, a group of men she had fed in her own kitchen, tenants she had let stay rent-free for months when they were broke, conspired. They knew when her husband had withdrawn money for a new business venture. They didn't just rob the house because they were afraid of being recognized. They were brutal. They broke in at 9 p.m., just an hour after what is now her lockdown time. They used the noise of the generator to hide my husband's screams, she said, her eyes staring at nothing. My son, Efe, he tried to fight them. He tried to save his father. By the time the neighbors realized what was happening, her husband was gone and Efe was in a coma from which he never woke up. The sweet tenants, they vanished into the night with everything she owned, including her peace of mind. So you see, Mama Efe, she said, finally looking at me, the 8 p.m. curfew, it's because the darkness reminds me of the night I lost my world. They know visitors because the people I trusted most are the ones who destroyed me. They know generator because every time I hear that engine, I hear the sound of my husband's last breath being drowned out by a machine. I sat there, the mud drying on my skin, feeling like the smallest person in the world. All those nights I cursed her, all the times I called her a witch, I was looking at a woman who was living in a prison of trauma, and the only way she knew how to stay safe was to turn the whole world into a prison too. We sat in silence for a long time. Then Mama Efe stood up. She went to the back, washed her face, and came out with a clean towel. She handed it to me. "Go and wash," she said, her voice regaining a bit of that old grit. "You look like a masquerade that fell into a gutter. And your hair, that bone thing, it's in the mud. Go and fix it." I didn't pack out, but things changed. Now, when it's 7:55 p.m., I don't race the gate. I walk to her veranda and say, "Mama, I'm home." and she nods, waiting for me to get inside before she clicks that heavy lock. The generator? I bought a long, heavy-duty extension cord. Now, I put the generator far at the back of the compound, wrapped in a soundproof box I built. And every Saturday, before I turn it on, I bring her a small plate of whatever I'm cooking. She still grumbles. She still complains about the scented corpse candles. She still tells me my dresses are too short for a proper Benin girl. But last week, when my brother Eseosa came back to drop off my slipper, she didn't blow the whistle. She just looked at him from the window and shouted, "You, Dada boy, come inside and eat bread. But if I see you near my gate by 8 p.m., I will still call the police for you." I laughed, because in Benin City, you don't just find a house. If you are lucky, you find a story. And even a yeye landlady can become a mother if you are willing to sit in the mud with her for a while.